Connecting Minds is a space dedicated to honoring the amazing authors, researchers, clinicians, artists, and entrepreneurs who are contributing to our collective evolution or simply making the world a better place. These thought-provoking conversations are intended to expand our horizons, so come with an open mind and let us grow together. Here is your host, Christian Yordanov.
Hello and welcome to the Connecting Minds podcast. My name is Christian Yordanov and thank you so much for joining me today. On the podcast today, on episode 9, I have for you a conversation I had with Marty Leeds. He is an author, musician, content creator. He has a website and a channel on YouTube that is quite popular where he covers a lot of different topics, quite esoteric in nature. So he covers symbolism, mythology, numerology, gematria, sacred geometry, and other things. And so pretty fascinating stuff, which if you're at all interested in this kind of stuff, I'd highly recommend checking out his YouTube channel or his website. He has tons of videos covering all sorts of things, from the hidden numerology in the Bible and other sacred texts, to even the numerology in various events that happen around the world. I consider him a polymath because he just covers so many different topics that it's really difficult to pin him down to what is his niche in terms of the content he creates. I love his content. I wish I had more time to watch all of it. He is quite prolific lately, especially with what he produces. As I said to him during our conversation, one day when I take a slightly longer break from the stuff I do, I'll definitely be digging hard into his reading list that he recommends on his website and just more into his content. So today we just discuss the basics of his background, his work, how he got into all this stuff. And then he kind of goes into a little bit, he basically gives you a taste of how you can see the mathematics in the world around us, how you can see the fingerprint of the creator that can be found in the human body, the number of bones in our hands, in the spine, in the skull. It's actually fascinating once you kind of really get into that and how it reflects the moon cycles and so on, right? That's just a very simple example. And then we also talk about what gematria is, this way of encoding numbers into words and letters, the hidden numerology in the Bible and other sacred texts. Then we discuss certain numbers. For example, 666 is considered kind of an evil number or associated with Satanism. But is it really, is the question I posed to him. So I'd recommend, if you enjoy this conversation, to check out his work, because we only scratched the surface really in an hour. It's fascinating stuff, but you do need to spend a little bit of time digging into it for it to start making more sense. So I hope at the very least I pique some of you's interest into this kind of stuff, because for many things in the world, we have the exoteric, or what the eye plainly sees, but there's a lot of hidden meanings and so-called esoteric meanings to many seemingly run-of-the-mill events and things and names and so on. So there's a lot of mysteries out there that once you start digging around, it's really fascinating. But anyway, without further ado, here is our conversation with Marty Leeds. Thank you once again for joining me. Really appreciate you being here. Enjoy. Today, on the Connecting Minds podcast, I have the honor to present Mr. Marty Leeds. Marty, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
To start with, can you give folks a little bit of a background? What kind of stuff are you into and how did you get into it?
I'm into everything. I'm basically into the mysteries of all being. That's, I basically got started into being an author and orator, whatever, lecturer, that sort of thing. Got into it with basically asking the big questions about life, why we're here, where are we going, what happens when we die, what the heck was going on in the past, all that sort of stuff. And, and then just a genuine pursuit of those answers. And so that led to essentially the core of what I do is a study of mathematics, like a metaphysical study of mathematics, and understanding that mathematics and number geometry, that whole canon is essentially a metaphysical language. And so I started there, and that led directly into religion, mythology, archaeoastronomy, and whatever. Looking at ancient buildings, cathedrals, tabernacles, pyramids, that sort of stuff. And that got into language, et cetera, et cetera. So I basically pursued the mysteries of life, and through sort of a mathematical bias, or through sort of a mathematical lens. And that led to what I'm doing now. And that includes, a total of 7 books written, and I don't know how many, 8 documentaries, and a couple hundred podcasts. And so a lot of work on the subjects. So
A lot of work, yeah. So where do we start with the mathematical stuff, the number stuff? I'd like to on this particular episode maybe discuss, and you can start this in any way you want, right? In any order that you feel is most appropriate to introduce the listener to it. But where did your research land you? So through all I've seen your kind of some of your reading list on your website. There's a lot of amazing books there that one day I hope to read as many of those. But what's up with it? What's up with the numbers, the mathematics of God? Where can we see proof of those?
Okay, the first thing I think we have to do is, and what I ended up doing through my own study, was understanding what numbers are. And that is that numbers and math, being numbers and geometry itself, is a metaphysical language. And it actually perfectly defines that. That's not like some woo-woo, like new age kind of talk, like, oh, numbers are metaphysical, man, kind of thing. It's like, no, the actual terminology metaphysical, like the physical world, we have the physical world that we can touch and measure, and, we can pick up and move, and it's malleable, and we can build and destroy and blah, 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 right? We have the physical world. But then we have a world that's metaphysical, and that meta literally means beyond. And that's what numbers and geometry actually are. It's a language that has its stasis, or has its foundation beyond the physical. And we can actually prove this to be so. It's been known by all of the great thinkers and polymaths over the years, but that the numbers, geometry are a language, and it's essentially the language of the creator. So we can see them, their qualities, their principles, their effects. We can see them in the physical world. And not only can we see them in the physical world, but we can prove that they exist in a metaphysical world. And we can prove that by the fact that numbers, geometry have a universality to it. Okay. It has a ubiquitousness to it. It's always going to be what it is. And you can explain it simply this way. It doesn't matter where you're from, where you came from, what language you speak. If you're white, black, brown, yellow, red, it doesn't matter. When you were born on this earth, numbers and geometry will always be the same. If you say 3, 4, and that's a right triangle, we know that hypotenuse is going to be 5, because that is a principle that is it's considered a theorem. And so theorems are universal. Math has that quality to it in and of itself. So therefore, we can establish math as literally the math, or the language of the creator and the creation itself. And so that's kind of what it's all about. So that's the first thing you have to do when we start talking about math, because people can be like, oh, you can make math fit anything you want, or they don't understand, but we have to really step back and be like, well, no, what is this thing that we're dealing with here? Because not only do you have numbers, and those numbers have associating geometry to them, which means you have this abstract sort of notion that has like a literal building block to it in geometry. And then those numbers have qualities to each and every single one of them. Are they odd? Are they even? Are they prime? Are they non-prime? Is it a Fibonacci number, right? Blah, 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 blah. Those numbers have those qualities with a certain number of divisors, the geometry, all that stuff. And those numbers go into infinity.
Yeah.
So you can go to the number 8 and look at the qualities of the number 8 and be like, hey, its divisors are 1, 2, 4, and 8, blah, blah, blah. And then you can go to the number 1,888,400,000,000 and stuff, blah, blah, blah. And that number has an associating geometry and qualities and essences to it too. So the question becomes, where the hell does all that come from? Well, we have to establish what it actually is. It has a metaphysical quality to it. So that's where the study led me anyway.
Right. Okay, so I I like it when I think a good place to kind of start introducing folks is, I like when you talk about the human body and you start comparing, the bones in the hand, and how many days are in a moon cycle. Can you give that kind of, I really love when you talk about that stuff. Can you show us um how we can see that we are actually, there's a design to the human body that we can kind of talk about?
That's really what the study of math will lead you to. So as I just explained, it has that universality to it, right? So as we said, like, hey, if I 3, 4, and 5, if I get that, you're going to get the same thing. If I have 2 eggs, somebody gives me another 2 eggs. How many eggs do I have? I have 4 eggs, right? It's, this isn't, we're not yet in Orwellian speak where, 2 + 1 = 5 yet. So not yet.
Okay.
We're almost
Not
there,
yet.
but that is universality to it, right? Everyone can agree to that, right? So then you understand that universality is not just between people, not just between cultures and different, geography, different time and place, all that sort of thing. It's also as above and so below, which means that we can look up into and how we actually map and track the heavens, and look below, even onto the human temple, and find the exact same mathematical patterns, but not just arbitrary patterns like, what am I saying? Mathematical constants and things like that are used within, every study of math, whether that's trigonometry or engineering or building or blah, 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 blah. So we can see those mathematical principles, universal constants, as above, so below, on the human body, as above, right? So, and I'll just give you one example that a lot of people well know. Like if you look at the Fibonacci sequence is a sequence of numbers that adds up, and it's basically a natural growth, right? This will lead you to what's known as the golden mean and the golden section. And a lot of people know this. It's the classic swirl and things like that. And what that is it's basically a fingerprint of God's, design or whatever. It's a design element of creation, and it's called phi. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your body's built on phi, your hand's built on phi, the cochlea of your ear's built on phi. I mean, there's phi proportions all throughout your body, but not just your body. You can find it on a dog, on a bee. You can find it on plants. You can find it on, animate and inanimate objects, everything from a shell to you. So you find all of that. It's like, okay, wow, that's everywhere in my creation. Then you can look up and find that pattern in the heavens as well. So, we have 365 days of our sun, and that's a yearly cycle of the sun. And we have 225 days of Venus, and that's a yearly cycle of Venus. Well, 365 divided by 225 is 1.62. It's 99.98% correct to 1.618, which is what we just, the golden mean, the golden section right there. So just something like that. The patterns and order between two heavenly bodies that will give you, by simple division, one of these key numbers that you find all around in your creation. So the ancients just basically understood that, any sophisticated culture that's been in our past that we can see with their building, whatever, their architecture, their language, blah, 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 their religious books, you can see that they understood this very clearly. And we're trying to pass this wisdom on. And they could pass it on because they were passing it on through the medium in which you could pass it on, which would be the universality of mathematics.
Okay. So what about the hand? What about the bones of the hand? What can you tell us about that?
Well, there's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot there. There's simple things too that, like, number one, just the power of your hands. Like, especially like in the Christian canon, right? You have like the kingdom of heaven is at hand, right? Which is a very heady, poetic statement right there. A lot of people will gloss over these statements in the Bible and don't realize it's like, actually, that's very Zen and very deep when you think about it. The kingdom of heaven is at hand, because look at the symbolism of your hands. Your hands do everything. They bring into they bring your world into manifestation. Who you bring into your world, who you let into your world, who you love, who you hate. You know what I mean? What you do with your hands. Do you spend all day on watching porn and playing video games, or do you go build houses and do charity work, or whatever it is? You know what I mean? Your hands bring a lot of times your thoughts into manifestation, right? You do everything with your hands. Like I just said, you make love, you walk a dog, you plant your garden, you fix your house, you drive your car, everything with your hands. You read your holy books with your hands, Yeah. So that alone tells you that there's your hands itself are these powerful tools. Well, then if you just look down and you understand once again that there's intelligence within this creation, right? Okay. And there's always this philosophical conundrum to people that believe that are like atheistic or agnostic, because it's like, if you're intelligent and you're looking at the creation from which you were born and saying that's unintelligent, how did you get your intelligence? It's like you're using your own intelligence to look at the nature from which you were born and say it's unintelligent. It doesn't make any sense, right? So we understand that nature is intelligent and we were born from it. Okay. We're a manifestation of it. Even if we go so far as to say that nature comes from a great creator, a God, right? Then we look at our hands, okay, and we look at all the things we do with it, building and all that sort of stuff. They're naturally segmented, okay? You can see them, right? So there's simple mathematical, like basic mathematical, like numerological things. People that would be, a lot of people consider numerology like recreational math or stupid math, but actually it's right on your hands. So if you look at your hands right here, you have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 phalanges on each hand, right? So 3 on each finger, 2 on each thumb, okay? Mm-hmm. Well, that's 1 thumb and 4 fingers. And that's 14 phalanges. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. And 1 and 4 and 14 is 1 thumb and 4 fingers, right? Numerology. Okay, so then if you have 14 and you have 14, that's 28. Well, that's 2 thumbs and 8 fingers. That's 28. So that's considered. And then, of course, if you look at what's 1 plus 4, 1 plus 4 is 5, and that's 5. So 14 reduces down to 5. So that's numerology. That's pretty much dismissed in all, like, any like university level mathematician be like, well, numerology is just nonsense. That's essentially what you'll hear, but it's actually right in your hands. And then you could say, well, that's nice or whatever. But then you even go further, and there's actually a multiplication table of 9 right on your hands as well. Once again, the creator has left for us right on our hands. So, when you go 1 times 9, I'll just show this real quick. 1 times 9 is what? It's 9. You have 9 fingers here. So 4 here and 5. 2 times 9 is what? It's 18. And you have 1 finger here and 8 fingers here. So 1, 2. 2 times 9 is 18. 3 times 9 is what? 2 and 7. 27.
I've never seen you do that one.
So once again, that's a multiplication table, and that goes the whole way. And it also shows the mirroring aspect of math as well, which is something I don't want to get into now. But that's all left for you on your hands. And so those are all high, I mean, sound mathematical ideas, completely sound, 100% provable, verifiable, universal mathematical ideas that are left simply right on your hands. The thing that we've lost is that, and then like there's school, I don't mean to keep ranting here, but there's like kids in like India that they do complex mathematics on their hands. A guy will just be like rattling off like 153, 121, 119, 147, and then they'll get the answer because they're literally just going like a calculator. And so we've lost all this knowledge, but when you get back to the idea that, hey, the creation is intelligent because there's a creator behind it, then we can go into the creation itself and learn from it, and so that's left right here for us,
Yeah. That reminds me of a picture I saw once. This dog with the hairs, on it, and there's a bunch of fleas, and one of the fleas is talking to the other fleas, and it's like, what evidence is there even that there is a dog?
Yeah.
And it's like, what evidence is there that there is a God? You just look around, you're like, oh shit. But
everything.
Yeah, everything pretty much, Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, tell us, how did you I know you talk a lot about the kind of the hidden numerology in the Bible. How did you kind of get into that stuff? How did you start deciphering that?
Well, I mean, it was once again pursuing an answer, like actually wanting an answer, and then spending a lot of my young adult life and into even like now, like listening to people that, pardon my language, are full of shit, right? So you find out later that it's like, oh, they were totally off mark. And then, you embrace that, or you had ideas that were completely wrong. And so I was like, how do you bypass that? How do you actually find something that's true? It's like, there's no question whatsoever that if I get to this right now, that is truth 100%. No one, that sort of thing. That's where it led to math. Because like I just said, it's like, once again, what is the 17 triangular number? It's 153. It will always be that, right? It's that kind of thing. Mm. So then it got into, well, what is the religious impulse? Like, why is it that nearly in every culture across the world, there is some sort of pursuit or a mythology or a religious book or a practice or something that honors and venerates gods or a creator? And then you start actually getting into that. So like number one, what is that impulse? What drives people to that? And then not only that, but it's like, why is it that, especially when you get into comparative mythology, comparative religious study, you'll find that there's a lot of similar elements and themes that keep popping up. When you get into the numeric study of that, what you'll see is that there's tons of examples of this, where it's like, oh my Lord, there's the number 7 again. Why is the number 7 holy everywhere? Why is the number 3 holy everywhere, right? I mean, that got me into the work on the Trinity, looking at why the number 3 is so important, and so eventually that led to a strong focus on the Bible for a myriad of reasons. But I mean, one of which, notwithstanding whatever, is that my extended family was all like Catholic and Christian. So that was sort of, residue from that or whatever. But, you go into the Bible and you'll find these themes. If you look at it through mathematical eyes, which most people don't, right? If you look at it through geometric eyes, which nearly everybody doesn't, they pop out like crazy. I mean, and there's an entire chapter in the original Torah, translated into English anyway, that's called Numbers. Mm. So it's like, okay, well, here's this universal language that seems to be at the underpinning of this book. And it, why was the creation done in 7 days? And why 40 days and 40 nights? And, why was Jesus about 32 or 33 years old when he died? And, all of these questions. Why 144,000, right? Why 153 fish? Like all of those things, that's very specific numbers are given. And you're just like, what? Right? So that led into being like, okay, well, there's got to be something more there. There has to be,
So,
and of course
okay,
there is.
Why did God create in the Bible in Genesis? Why did God create the earth or the world in 7 days?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I'm a literalist in that I understand that book is literature, but that's obviously a story, obviously a mythology, obviously a story to encase universal truths, right? So one of the first universal truths is, once again, when you get back to the ubiquitousness and just how once again, how universal numbers are. When you get to the number 7, it's like, okay, well, this is one of those numbers. This is why all of these cultures venerated this number, because there's something magical there. Okay. Why? What's so magical about the number 7? Well, 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5 + 6 + 7 = 28. That's your hands. Right? So that's 14 phalanges here and 14 phalanges here. So just adding 1 through 7, the triangulation of the number 7 leads to the tools that you use to pick up the Bible and read it itself. It's leading you to this architecture. It's leading you to this metaphysical architecture, to this language in which you can, learn and come to understand,
Mm-hmm.
So that's,
and
that's why.
What other things have you found encased in the Bible? Now, I know, for example, you have some lectures on the significance of the number 42. That's one, for example. What is the significance of that?
Well, this is the thing, is like all of those numbers are basically like, I call them like Karens on the path, or they're like pillars or like lighthouses or something like that to get you into this study. And so there are key numbers that will do that. 13 is one of them. 42 is another. 666 is one. 33 is one, right? And what are they? 144 is obviously yet another one of these, right? 9 is a big one for people, you know? It's like they're numbers that it's like, what is going on with that number? Why is that number not, why is 42 important as opposed to 41? You know, what's up with the number 33? You know, why is 666 this number of the devil or whatever? It's like those things basically present you the mystery through the number itself. And that's actually what it did for me, because I was like, okay, well, what do these numbers mean? Right? And why is it so important that they encoded them in the Bible? And then not only just in the Bible, but in like all other religious texts and ideas, you know, everything from, as far as we can tell, the Old Testament, or the original Torah, absolutely. You know, the Quran is more than likely, encoded. And then the original Greek New Testament is more than likely encoded. And I'm saying the English version, authorized King James, is encoded. So, but that's what they are. I mean, then it basically, in leading you to this, it's trying to get you to understand the architecture, which is basically just to understand God more, you know. And right. Most people don't know that that's what these holy books are actually there. I mean, even though that's what religion is there to do, literally supposed to bring you closer to God. That's actually what is encoded in the religious texts. But most of the exoteric people that practice and preach these religions have zero understanding of that, no clue of that. Yet, if you actually do the homework and actually burn the calories and go into the religious literature, it's pretty clear that that's what they were, you know, that they were holding on to this knowledge, you know. Even I don't want to keep going, but you can go into, church fathers of orthodoxy that will tell you that heaven is a circle and earth is a square. You know, common knowledge back in the day that we have completely lost now, you know. So
yeah, so my understanding, at least from kind of listening to some of your lectures, is the Bible is is not meant to be taken literally as a story, as a historical account. Yet probably some 99.9% of people either look at it that way or are taught it that way and accept it that way. And I think that's where a lot of people, they're like, well, this is bullshit. This cannot possibly be true. Therefore, it's bullshit, right? But where you're coming from is that there's, at least in the authorized King James version, there are deeper lessons in there that are hidden for those that want to discover them. Is that right?
Yeah, like, so when I went to the Bible, because I tried to read it when I was like 20, 21 years old, and I was like, what is this, right? And then to revisit it, right? I looked at it. I didn't look at it. It was like, I didn't try to go into it and be like, this is what this means. I went into the Bible and I was like, okay, I'm going to try to learn from it, right? So you would do the same thing that you would do picking up a James Joyce's Ulysses or Dante's Inferno or anything. You pick up the book and you're like, okay, well, what is this? The first thing, is it poetry? Is it a history book? Is this a book of mythology? Is this guy telling a story? Is this a personal account? That's the first thing. So I looked at it like that, which was very almost like completely, I just abandoned any preconceived notions and I took a very scholarly approach, right? And then understanding how, classic works of literature, at least in some respects, some classic works of literature, there's all sorts of things that authors would use back in the day, mainly called literary devices, that would clue you into what you're reading, right? Like automatopoeia, anthropomorphism, synecdoche, freaking allegory, parable, metaphor, all of those sorts of things, right, that are used classically in works of literature. Okay, so I picked up the Bible and I'm like, what is this? Well, you'll find all of those literary devices that were used in mythology, storytelling, just Latin over the whole thing, right? Then you look at it, once again, just a scholarly approach, and you say, okay, people are basically saying that this is a history book. Well, there's not a single date in the whole thing. It doesn't tell you when it started, when the Old Testament ends, when the New Testament ends. You have the birth of the Savior. You have things that people said going to meet him, but they never gave you a specific date, when he died, when he was born, none of that. So I looked at that and I'm like, how is anybody coming to this and saying that this is a history book? It doesn't even read like a history book. There's issues with linear continuity. There's issues with, all of this sorts of things, right? Which is basically, I was like, oh, no. This is presenting you a grand mystery. And every single story and every single letter and every single character. Why is there an Old Testament? Why is there a New Testament? That's a mystery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then, I went in and approached it like that. In other words, I approach it literally in the sense that it is a piece of literature, but is it a historical book? No, there's nothing historical about it. And when you actually release yourself from that, you actually get to see, like, the mysteries start opening up, in other words, right? Because you're like, oh no, this is astrotheological. There's anatomy here. There's, there's gematria, there's, mathematical constants, there's music, so it's just,
Can you tell the listeners, what is gematria or gematria? What is that, and how do you use it?
Well, this study has had like a bunch of different names depending on who gives it. And some, what culture uses it or whatever, right? So like in English, it would be gematria, right? But Greek would be like isosophy or whatever. Sometimes it's known as Kabbalah. And so that word right there immediately turns people off. They're just like, oh, this is obviously Satanism, things like that. But when you actually get into what the study is, it is actually trying to understand the qualities and essences of numbers and how they actually interplay and work in the world. This leads right to the building and the architecture of all those great temples, all those great churches, cathedrals. So when you look back to whoever it was that were building those things and that sort of thing, they were all using the universal language of math, And so, anyway, I'm going to keep rambling here, but.
No. It's good. It's good. Please continue. In fact, I was just gonna go back a second. What is 666 an evil number? What's up with 666?
Well, there's really no like evil numbers or good numbers. You know what I mean? It's just really how a number is used. People will say the same thing with like 33. It's actually one of the reasons that I originally used 33. It was a bevy of reasons, but one of them is that I knew there was this paranoia or superstition around that number. And it was like, when I studied math, it was like, oh no, actually it connects you to squaring the circle. And then it leads you right to 864. Like there's all, Jesus actually allegedly died after 33 years. There's all these actually really great things about 33, but most people have their, it's like, oh no, that's Satanism and the Illuminati and blah, 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 blah. Right. So I just sort of broke all those barriers and I'm just like, I'm going to go learn myself. Right. 666 is no different. It isn't to say that 666 can't be used as evil or there aren't evil people in the world that use it. That's actually not the point. My point is actually, I would say it's a little bit more of a sophisticated point I'm making, but I might be patting myself on the back incorrectly. But like, if the devil is using the number 666 in the sense, or Satan or evil people, whatever you want to say, right? Whatever terminology you want to throw on that. All they're doing is taking something that actually has a meaning, a divine meaning, something that's sacred or something that actually will help you understand the connectivity of everything, and twisting it, perverting it, throwing it on its head, right? In the sense of the story in the Bible of, whatever, Satan using 666 or whatever, right? Well, in that sense, that would just be like, okay, 666 is a number of actually Christ, but Satan is using it. So that way, every time you think of that number, you don't think of the connectivity. You don't think of the creator. You don't think of Christ. You think of Satan. It's a misdirect. It's a classic move by mafia people and criminals. And, it's like, no, don't look here. Look here, So a number can be used for good or evil. 666 is actually a number that is right on your phone. Using simple numerology. It's one of the base ways in which, and I go over that on my site. You can just, if you look on your phone is separated in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? That's your keypad. There's a 0 at the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You add a cross. 1, 2, 3 is 6. 4, 5, 6 is 15. 1 plus 5 is 6. And 7, 8, 9 is 24. And 2 plus 4 is 6. So just numerologically adding across your phone is 6, 6, 6, right on your phone, right? The base way in which we measure time can be reduced the same way. And this is the measurement of time that's been recorded by anybody that was using an astrolabe or a sextant or, the Babylonians' sexagesimal system. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day. 60, 60, 24. 6 plus 0 is 6. 6 plus 0 is 6. 2 plus 4 is 6. 6, 6, 6. So right there, and then there's a bunch of other examples I could give you right now to show, once again, architecture, connectivity, right? Yeah. But all it is flipped on its side or its end to be like, nope, it's actually this other thing,
Yeah. So give us more examples. I actually love hearing more examples. What about like the number 43, 432 and the sun, for example? I know you've talked about that.
I'll give you another example of 666, which is really interesting too. So when you look at, once again, the holy number 7, right? This we have it on our hands. It's actually on our feet as well. You have the same number of phalanges on your feet as you do on your hands. Adding 1 through 7 is 28. That's up here and down there. 7 days of creation, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on 7 for days, whatever. But then you look at the first 7 primes, which is 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, and 13, right? 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, and 17. Those are the first 7 primes. So that's a significant thing because not only are they prime, which means first, it's the first 7, that holy sacred number. You square all of those, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, and 17. 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 5 squared is 25, 7 squared is 49, 11 squared is 121, 13 squared is 169, 17 squared is 289. If you add all of that up, it's 6, 6, 6.
Wow.
So once again, 666 in just the basic number line of 1 through 9. 666 in how you actually measure out time. 666 found in the square of the first 7 primes. It's stuff like that that's like, no, this is pointing to architecture. It's saying, hey, this is how time is delineated. This is how time is segmented and we record it. This is how primes are structured. This is the base 10 system, 0 through 9 on your phone, basically broken up into a trinity. It's that kind of stuff,
So some evil people take what is holy and they make it tainted.
That's the classic move. Yeah, inversion, perversion, basically, throwing something on its head, and I don't want to get into that, but it's like you just look at, it's the classic move of taking something pure, virgin, holy, and distorting it, perverting it. It's no different than pedophilia. It's no different than taking an esoteric doctrine and promoting it completely as exoteric, throwing away the mysteries. It's no different. It's taking something great and destroying it. So,
yeah. So what about Jesus Christ? I know you talk about there's some stuff encoded in his name, not just in English, but also in Greek. Could you discuss that a little bit?
Okay, so this is the important thing when people hear this is that there are different numbering systems for every different language, right? And this has been well recorded. This is not like woo-woo conspiracy stuff. This is well recorded within, just university professors, things like that, right? You can see it practiced now in certain colleges, especially like Hebrew colleges, clearly. That Hebrew, the original Hebrew, had a cipher, had a particular system. The abjad letter system in the Quran is no different, right? The Greek had a lettering system, right? And what I'm saying is that we have one for English, and it's a septenary. It's one based on the holy number 7, again, based on your hands and all that sort of stuff, right? So when you look at these people, these characters like Jesus Christ, we have his name in English, we have his name in Old English, we have his name in the original Greek, right? Then we can go into other languages like Hebrew, and we can find the names of God in Hebrew, right? Elohim, Shaddai, whatever, right? What people need to understand is like, okay, you have different lettering systems and different numbers and different languages and things like that. But you know what you will find? the exact same mathematical constants in all of those different languages. So once again, different languages, different numbering systems, different people, different religions in a lot of cases, right? Then you get to the foundation of all their languages, though. And what do you find? Once again, not just like the same numbers, extremely important, once again, not arbitrary numbers, constants, mathematical constants. You'll find pi. You'll find the same numbering systems within Greek and English and Hebrew, which shows, once again, a universality to a lot of the, well, number one, the religious impulse, but a lot of these religions, that at the underlying core of it is actually this knowledge system. And once again, what I'm saying and what I've been asking people to do for the last 10 years is you can't just say that. You have to present information that would be provable. Well, I'm saying you can prove that. And the way it would be provable would be using the scientific method, which means that you would be verifiability, repeatability, and demonstrability. If I make a claim that the word 7 encodes pi, everybody has to be able to prove that. Well, they can. And it's that simple.
How does 7 encode pi? And so, and
The
if you
word-
could actually also talk about what is the significance of pi. That I was going to ask you that.
Okay, so when you get into the study of mathematics, once again, when I mentioned, we started this conversation off talking about like the universality of math, right? Math and geometry, a circle's a circle, square's a square, right? That kind of thing. You have certain mathematical constants within this language, and they're really important, and they're heralded by, you can go to Mathology online, you can go to Numberphile online, you can call any university. They can't argue with me because it's just such well-known information, right? Certain mathematical constants that are well-known and utilized in different areas of mathematical study, right? So E is one of them, 2.718, clearly. Square root of 2 is one of them. Square root of 3 is one of them. Pi is one of them. Tau is one of them. 1.618 being phi is one of them, right? And then, of course, there's lots of theorems and formulas that are used, things like that, like everything from, you can go from, the Pythagorean theorem, we can go to the fractal mathematics. What is it? Z squared equals, I forget what it is, but you know what I mean? It's like there are certain formulas that they're just universal, right? So what was your original question? You wanted to know
What's the significance of pi, and how does 7, for example, encode
yes.
it?
Okay, I'm sorry. So pi is one of these extremely significant ones, right? It very well could be considered one of the most important mathematical constants out there. I don't think that's even arguable, really. And so pi is obviously one of these, it's a universal constant. So in the number, so we have an entire cipher for the English alphabet that's based on the number 7. It literally goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it does that twice. And that's all based on, once again, the number 7.
So
then you
A
look
is
at the
1,
word,
B is 2, C is 3, G is 7, that and so on.
yeah, etc. So you basically split the alphabet in half. And by walking up to 7 and walking back down to 1, what you actually did there was square a number, which is yet another mathematical constant. Squaring a number is no different than cubing a number, but you can actually do it just by walking up the number line. So 7 squared is 49. And if you want to get 49, you just go 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. 49. That's 7 squared, right? So that's right there, just in the formulation of the cipher itself, you were given a mathematical constant. See what I'm saying? So it's all focused on the number 7. Then you actually do the word 7 in English, SEVEN, and that's 65551. That equals 22. So now you're given two numbers, 22 and 7. Well, once again, math is a language, right? And when you start to learn that language, you can start to see these things very clearly, right? If you're given two numbers as a mathematician, 22 and 7, you say, hey, find me a constant there. 22 divided by 7 is 3.1428571. It is an approximation, an abbreviation of pi that's been used throughout the world and is used throughout the world in common practice and just everyday work and things like that. But not only that, it's just an approximation used throughout the world. So 3.142, 3.1415, it's pi. And of course, pi is an infinite transcendental number, so you have to approximate it. You have to abbreviate it. And every mathematician knows that because at some point you have to truncate pi Doesn't in any practical application, you have to cut it off at some point, whether that's 3.14, 3.141, 3.142. So boom, right there. So the word 7, using the number 7 gives you, so using a mathematical constant gives you another mathematical constant. Then that's done twice in our alphabet. So not only do you get the squaring of the number 7, you get the mathematical constant of pi. When you do that twice in the alphabet, you actually get 2 pi. And that pi, or that other pi, lands on the T in the alphabet. Well, that's the letter T, which is the letter tau. And tau in mathematics is literally 2 pi. And when you look at the Greek symbol, it's almost it looks like half of pi. It's like they took half the symbol of pi or whatever and just made the tau. So you have the number 7 resting on the T, which is the symbol for tau. And that's the second pi that you get in the alphabet. Tau in mathematics is 2 pi. So that's 3 mathematical constants, and you haven't even put any really numbers to letters of any words yet, save for the number 7.
It's amazing how, okay, first of all, numbers and the mathematics and all that stuff, obviously that's a God's creation, and it's amazing. Like some of the stuff is amazing, you know, like if you walk a number up and down.
I'm sorry, can I stop you?
Yeah.
You said that God's creation right at the 42-minute mark. I swear, dude. As soon as you said that, I looked up and was like, "Oh, it's a 42." Anyway, go on. Sorry.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Huh? It's weird, but I keep seeing 144 on plates on cars here. It's so weird. Everywhere I look, it's 144, 42, this kind of stuff. I don't get it. But yeah. So anyway, mathematics, obviously God created that, right? The creator, the universe, whatever, the higher power. But the English language, the alphabet, man, humans created that, right? And the language has been evolving over the millennia, or the last few hundred years. So how do you, please feel free to speculate, how do you think it's evolved where all of this is so well encoded in the Bible? Like the Bible, this version of the Bible we're talking about, King James's version, it was written in the 16th century, I believe. How is it so well done, so well encoded, all this stuff?
So the original King James, right? And it's called the Authorized King James Version, which doesn't necessarily, the number one, the history, a lot of this stuff for me is, as soon as you start reaching back 400 years, it's like very questionable, right? Yeah. They say it's the Authorized King James Version. To me, that just means that he just authorized it. He probably had nothing to do with it, really. You know what I mean? But he was just some crazy king. Who knows? But the original 1611 version is written in Old English. So if you look at Jesus's name, it's like it's I-E, I think it's I-E-S-U-S, whatever. Anyway. And then the Authorized King James Version that's in modern English today, there are contemporary English with 26 letters, right? That was done, I think, in like mid 1800s at Cambridge. Okay, so the like common the 26 letters that we use today for our English alphabet, right? That's not even, as far as we know, not even that old, right? And the Bible, the version of the Bible that Authorized King James Version in modern English is not that old, right? So that's the number one thing. Okay, so look at that. You obviously had some sort of shift in the language at some point where they actually added I think it's J and W and something else. There was another letter right there that they actually added those, and that of course changed the Bible, right? So you have that transition right there, right? And then you have so when you look at languages and like when you said, oh, languages have evolved over time and things like that, I don't know. I don't know if that's true. Meaning that, yes, languages evolve, but I think there are specific things that are done to the language at some point to actually craft and create it. And those changes, right, meaning the structure of the alphabet itself is actually therein encoded in the religious text of the time, right? So, and that's exactly what I see happening in the Authorized King James Version, meaning whatever shift in the language we did have whenever it did occur a couple hundred years ago, that shift was intentional and there were things added and things omitted and things recorded in the religious text of the time. Then you also have to look at, and this is well known by linguists and scholars of language and all that sort of thing, how much our language is completely encoded within biblical ideas and terms and things like that. Just even though you could talk to any atheist or agnostic and they'd be like, "Oh, Jesus Christ." They'll say things like that. Our language and our everyday conversation and speech is completely intertwined with so much of the language of the Bible, even in modern English, So that's all things like that. So one of the things about that is that when you look at the language, you say, well, yes, human beings did craft it. Like somebody did come along, a human being, and created Hebrew and created, whatever, the abjad letter system and created the Greek letters and thing in English, right? But if you look at English, what's interesting is when you look at the letters, especially the modern English letters, they seem to be built on geometric ideas, right? Like an A frame, a C hook, a D is no more than a dome. You know what I mean? An L bracket, a right angle, that sort of thing. Even like the J is a hook, things like that. The X,
so you're
right?
saying,
Yeah, these are
so
all.
you're saying the Freemasons did it?
Well, it's whoever constructed it understood the universality of architecture, masonry, math, geometry, for sure. So what I'm saying is when you look at the fact that squaring the number 7, pi and tau are simply encoded in the language, that screams not only design but very specified structure. So in other words, language isn't something that just evolved, something that's haphazard, that things were added, because that's what most people believe. I don't know if that's true. I don't think that's true anymore. And so, that gives a different spin on what language is and all of that sort of thing. But what we can prove is that languages of the past that are used today absolutely do have that structure, and it has been recorded, it has been studied, it has been passed on, and it's well known. So what's to say English doesn't have that as well?
Yeah, I guess I misspoke when I said evolve. I probably should have said something like develop or change, because it definitely seems like it's intention. The reason I say that is, if you look at a Latin language, if you look at, let's say, Bulgarian, in my case, it's like what you see is what you get type of language. And in English, if you look at, for example, the word, the name John, there's an H there. Now that's got no, and there's a million examples of this where there's letters in there that, to a foreigner learning the language as a second language, like that completely makes no sense to be there. And there's no rhyme or reason, apparently, until maybe you look deeper into what's the numerology of that word. Like Jesus, Christ. Why is the H there, for example, when we don't need the H to pronounce it that way? That's just one example.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's exactly what I mean. Like when you start actually examining language, and because this is the conclusion I came to when I was like young too. It's like, it's just a haphazard mess. It's just a cobbled together, like you're just throwing shit here. Like, why is night spelled with a K and knife spelled with a KNIFE? That can knife. It's like none of that makes sense, right? And that would lead. And that did lead me to the conclusion that is probably, but then as you're saying, well, maybe those are clues left in the language specifically to point to something else, right? And that's the conclusion I've come to now, especially knowing that like you can decode chess, and it's like, no, without the K in front of knight, it would screw up the entire encoding of chess. So it's like the K in knight has to be there, in other words. So you see all sorts of things like that within the language, which is fascinating, because it's like, no, there was intention there. Whoever put this stuff there was like, no, we're spelling, and that we're not only spelling it this way, we're putting it in religious texts, and we're defining it in dictionaries, So this to me shows, once again, structure, design, a lot of foresight, extremely intelligent people, that sort of thing. Another clue to this is that there's and this will hopefully get the people thinking about this as well. It's very kind of philosophical, but like another clue to me that there was something more going on with language was that when, like, if I needed to tell you, like, hey, I'm going to hand you $3, right? Well, do I need the word THREE to do that? No. I could just, if I was going to write you that I'm going to give you $3, I can just use a numeral. Just go, that would be the most expedient, economical way to get to transmit that bit of information to you. 3, 1 letter. Okay, so why in the world would you need to have, be cumbersome and be like THREE, or I have 3,800. So I'm going to spell out THIRTY dash EIGH, why? No, I'm just going to write, then you realize, oh no, they spelled words out specifically and spelled them the way they did. Like FOUR is spelled that way because it's encoding what? More math. So there's a reason that they wrote out letter or words like 1, 2 phonetically with letters in order to encode higher wisdom. And I'm saying you can prove that for sure. So
Fascinating. Just talk to us a little bit about chess, because I've always loved chess since I was, 4 years old. I was playing. They taught me my folks. How is chess encoded?
Chess encodes, and anybody can do this. Once again, like whenever I say this stuff, it's like, I've written a book on it, and not a whole book, but a chapter in one of the books. I should do a whole little pamphlet on it, honestly. And I've got some videos on my site that you can check out. But like whenever I say this stuff, it's like you'd have to be able to verify it yourself. And what I'm saying is you absolutely can, the whole thing. So chess encodes 2 lunar, a solar, and a precessional calendar, as well as multiple ways of encoding pi. There's a ton of stuff in chess. There's a bunch of stuff I found even after I wrote the chapter in the book and stuff. But so yeah, you can get 2 lunar, a solar, and a precessional calendar from the pieces of chess. And that's literally looking at the English terms like king, queen, knight, bishop, rook, pawn, putting the associated numbers to them. And then basically just looking at how the structure of chess, or the actual pieces are laid out, and you can form, like I said, calendars. It's written. What it's doing, once again, is passing on these mathematical constants again, right? Like I just said, you can go to Hebrew and find pi. You can go to the English name of Greek, the Greek name of Jesus Christ and find pi. You can go to the English name of Jesus Christ and find pi. You can go to the number 7 and find pi. You can go to the letter T and find pi, right? Then you go to chess. Okay, well, what's the most prevalent player on the board? It's the pawn. There's 8 over here and 8 over here. So 16 pawns on the board. Pawn in English gematria, pawn is 3141. So PAWN is 3141. So in other words, the first time I did the encoding of that, I was just like, no way. Because that's a tell, right? If like you're a symbologist or sinologist or somebody like a code breaker or whatever, right? And you just like are interested in this shit. That's a mark. That's like, hey, look, what is that? If you know math at all, just like if you're a mathematician and you're handed 2 numbers, 22 and 7. Well, 22 divided by 7 is pi, right? If you're handed 3141, what does that tell you as a mathematician? Oh, they're referencing pi there. Except they're not only just referencing pi once, they're referencing pi as much as they possibly could on the board. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's just one of the encodings in chess. And chess has been, as you said, you've been fascinated with chess. I was always fascinated with chess too, but it's long been known as a king's game, a nobleman's game. It's like the game of life, and the piece of the board is the earth, and the pieces are that whole thing. So anyway.
Yeah, that's why it's square. That makes sense. If the square represents the earth and the circle represents the heavens, that's why the board is square. That makes sense.
The entire board references squaring the circle, because squaring the circle, in fact, and that's a whole nother thing, but it's basically looking at getting a square and circle with equal areas, or its circumference and perimeter of the square to be equal. There's kind of 2 different ways to square the circle. One of the main ways is with a square of 8, which is exactly what the chessboard is. It's 8 squared, it's 64 squares. And a circle of 9, unit 9, will be roughly equal in area. And so just by the 64 squares on the board, same thing with like the I Ching, it's all referencing square in the circle. Just the number of squares on the board is a reference to a square in the circle. Then the perimeter of that square, by the way, the perimeter of that square is 28 squares, which is what? Reference to your hands again.
Yeah, that's the chess. Like has always been like I look at it, I'm like the folks that came up with this game, they knew some shit. You know, they weren't just some ignorant ancients. You know.
That's what I'm saying. If you release yourself from, especially with like the Bible, and there's all sorts of things in our world like this. If you release yourself from the baggage of like what you think it is, right? And you just look at things like chess, like you're saying, like there's a weight to it. There's something else there, right? You're like, this isn't just a game. There's something going on here. I said the same thing with Humpty Dumpty. You know, like you just think about that and like, what the fuck is what is this riddle? What? There's something else there. You know what I mean? I say the same thing with like a deck of cards, right? I feel the same way with the Bible. It's like for the longest time, I'm like, what is this? There's something else going on here. And then you realize that all of these things, everything from chess to a deck of cards, to a dartboard, to a game of billiards, to the Bible, to a tarot deck, to a whatever, a pair of dice, all of these things, there's something else going on there. They're actually sort of like esoteric tools to pass on the mysteries. And I mean that very literally because all of them are encoded mathematically, all of them, you know?
Yeah. Okay. This just sorry, I have to crowbar this in. Talk to us about the pair of dice and paradise, and what's some fun facts about the dice?
Well, the die, okay, so this is where, like, actually, when you get into a study of Kabbalah, what Kabbalah actually means. So when people are like, Kabbalah is like Jewish mysticism, right? And it's like, well, no, Kaaba actually means cube, and Allah is Islam, you know, it's like a Muslim god, right? So even the term itself is sort of leans heavily towards like the Quran and that sort of thing, right? But what it is basically, Kabbalah is basically cube God. That's literally what it means. Like that somehow God is connected to a cube. Then you have to go into the study of geometry and symbolism to actually extract what the meaning of the cube is, right? So you look at what's the symbolism of the cube? Well, it's 6 pieces around one. That's the first thing, okay? This is a reference to, and you'll find this too in like Kabbalistic literature and mystical literature as well, that this is a reference to the 6 directions of space that you exist in. So forward, reverse, left, right, up, down, right? All resting on the center point of you. This is the basis of every 3-dimensional mathematics that you'll ever see. Anytime there's CGI done in Hollywood that uses 3D, you know, any of that sort of stuff, it's all based on 6 around 1. This is why God did his work in 6 days, rest on the 7th. That's a parable, that's an allegory to a direct reference to you. In other words, the genesis of all creation is reflected in the genesis of you, right? So that's one of the things that the cube represents, 6 around 1. Then you actually look at the cube and the pair of dice, right? As it's, you roll it and it's like, okay, well, one side if 1 comes up, the other side will be 6. That's 7. If 2 comes up, the other side will be 5. That's 7. If 3 comes up, the other side will be 4. That's 7. So even how the numbers are separated on the die is constantly like 7, 7, 7, right? Okay, so that's telling you about the importance of the number 7. Not only is the geometry, but how the numbers are there. Then you actually go and look at the die itself. It's giving you, once again, a bevy of mathematical constants. No different than what our language is doing. No different than what our language is doing. So you can get the square root of 2 on the die. If you look at the face, this diagonal there is the square root of 2. It's the Pythagorean theorem, actually. 1, square root of 2. So you're given the square root of 2, mathematical constant, Pythagorean theorem, mathematical constant. The angle between the cube is the square root of 3. So if you go from one side inside one corner to the next corner, it's the square root of 3. So now you're given the Pythagorean theorem, square root of 2, square root of 3, and the 6 directions of space, as well as the number 7, the importance of the number 7. Then you add the square root of 2 plus the square root of 3, and that's 3.146, which is an approximation of pi down to 99.99, whatever, 4% or some shit, right? So there, square root of 2, square root of 3, pi. 6 directions of space. Now you're inside the cube, look into the corner. It's 3 90-degree angles coming together in one. What's that? Well, if you take that geometry into human gestation or the process of creation, birth cycle, that's roughly the period of the trimesters, 3 months each. 3 months, 90 days, 3 months, 90 days, 3 months, 90 days. 90 plus 90 plus 90 is 270. And that's the corner of the cube. So that's the structure of, so in other words, after that time period, Bird's a human being that has 6 around 1. See what I'm saying? So once again, I showed you how there's a mathematical, I'm sorry, losing my train of thought here, that there's a multiplication table on your hands, right? And those are all universal constants. Then you go from here to a cube, and what do you find? Once again, the same sort of thing. So when we look at the language of like the pair of dice, right? These are all phonetic, once again, literary devices, phonetic tricks that have been used throughout literature all the time, right? To get you like, oh, wait, is that what they mean? So pair of dice is the paradise. And in the pair of dice is encoded all of those, well, once again, mathematical constants of God's language,
And there's so much more. There's like the 7 vertebrae of the neck, the 33 of the spine, and it just could. How many bones is in the skull? 7 again, isn't there? There's like 7.
Besides the mandible, you have 22 up here, and and then 7 neck bones back here. I think there's 1 bone here, but you're right. So it's like 22 and 7. You have 22 openings or whatever, or ways to interview the world. 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, a mouth, 2 ears. Right? That's 7 right there. So you know what I mean? Just to experience the world, and then basically, once again, save for the mandible, you have 22. Is that pie in your head?
Bones, 7 openings. Yeah.
Another interesting one is that you have like 13 bones in your palm and then 14 phalanges. So 13 here and 14. So it's like 14, 13. If you read that this way, it's 3141. Just like your thumb, once again, these are all these like little tricks or whatever, right? Now, you could throw all those little tricks out the window, if you will, right? You'd be like, that's all just he's playing with things. Okay, sure, you can throw all that out if you want. But you can't negate the fact that there's a multiplication table right on your hands. You can't negate the fact that the square root of 2 and the square root of 3 is encoded in the cube. You can't negate the fact that the square root of 2 plus the square root of 3 is pi down to, etc. There's all of these things that if you approached any reasonable mathematician, rational mathematician, because rational comes from the term ratio, by the way, rational mathematician, they would have nothing to say. They could not refute these things because they're just so true that children can understand it, really, Yeah. So that's what's so interesting. So one other thing, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 on the thumb. 3, 1, 4, 1 backward right there. 13 and 14. That's exactly where 42 is encoded. I mean, you could just go on and on and on because all of these things, once again, lead to these pillars. It's like, oh, there's pi again. Oh, there's the square root of 2 again. Oh, there's the number 7 again. So.
Yeah. I think just before, we'll close up with, you tell folks where they can find you, but just want to touch on another little topic for a little bit, if you could indulge us. It gets a little bit darker here, but I know that a lot of stuff, kind of bad stuff that happens, a lot of how do I say, terrorist attacks and things like that. There's a lot of stuff encoded in them. Can you give us a taster of some examples where there's stuff like this encoded into names or dates or things like that?
Well, I mean, I think any sort of like major terrorist attack, alleged terrorist attack, false flag, like specific scripted events, right? And I don't know which ones I can name, which ones I can't, but I cover many of them on my own site. But whatever, the everyday news and things like that, I'm not that interested in. But whenever you have like a bigger event, like a Las Vegas shooting or a 9/11, things like that, there's events like that you can see that to me are very well scripted. There's a conclusion that they're gaining from that. There's an agenda there. And not only that, there's specific propaganda that's pushed out. And all of that specific propaganda, as we're seeing with this COVID thing, is it's language that's pushed out and ideas, right? In the Las Vegas shooting, there was 72 minutes of terror. It was just 72 minutes of terror. And he was at, on the 32nd floor in room 135. And the guy that was outside of his room that stopped him, allegedly stopped, was Jesus Campos. All these. There's lots of things there that are put out and repeated in the media. Same thing with this, with COVID, what we're dealing with now. Social distancing, masks. These are all like trigger terms that they keep using, and it's the same thing, and they keep repeating it. And when you see that, you see it's clear. It's propaganda, because they have to keep repeating something to push that into your head, and so therefore you're like, oh, that's the new thing, So every time I see a major event, I'll just say this, and I guess I can just like lead people to, because there's tons of specifics I could give, but anytime you see like a major event, like what's going on now, what happened in 9/11, Las Vegas shooting, Sandy Hook, they are specifically, and I mean this very, very to the heart, they are specifically encoded with things that would be anti-Christ, for lack of a better term, or probably the most appropriate term, honestly, but like anti-creator, anti-human, anti-God, anti-logos, anti-order, for, things that would be specifically encoded. In other words, taking all of those things that we talked about before, that numbers that would be divine, numbers that actually tell you about the connectivity of everything, numbers that show you how you're designed, how you are made in the image of a great creator, that there's an intelligence behind this thing, that intelligence is running right through you all the way to the tippy top of your fingers, taking all of those things, using them in the context that they do, and distorting them specifically. Okay.
Very intentional.
And yeah. And so when you go into those things, what things I started finding was that that's exactly what they were doing. It wasn't just like some event that they concocted. This would be, in every sense of the word, like a satanic ritual, for every sense of the word. Some people don't like the term satanic, evil, nefarious, very wicked agenda. That's at its heart anti-human, anti-God.
All right. Well,
So yes,
if anybody's it can get very dark. I know that. And, I'm not sure the listeners are ready for that. However, if anybody is interested in learning more, Marty, can you tell us about where to find you on the web, social media, and tell folks about your books and about your music and everything you produce for others to read or listen to?
Yeah, well, my site is martyleeds33.com. I'm pretty much not on any social media, because I mean, for the most part, I just kind of run sort of a mystery school. I just sort of let people try to find me, and it's really cheap to sign up as a member. I had to put everything behind the paywall to not only protect it from our site because we've gotten attacked, and they were downloading tons of stuff, so we have to protect it from that, but also because of censorship, so we have to put everything behind a paywall. But a lot of the stuff I cover there, and it's only $5 a month, but there's also books, there's documentaries, there's a heap load of podcasts. There's like, I don't know, 10 records you can download of music. There's like, we're putting PDF books on there and stuff like that. So we just keep building that. So my own books you can read if you're a member. So basically you're getting like this library of information for about $5 a month at martyleeds33.com. But I'm not on any social media because I just they'll kick me off, and it's just a waste of time for me and stuff. And, it's so, yeah, that's that. But, yeah. And then I'm on Marty Leeds live on YouTube. I'm still on YouTube, and I'm still on DLive, which I live stream every week. And so I've got right now I'm doing sort of the interview portion of my show. So I'm interviewing a bunch of doctors about the COVID-19 thing. Just a whole bunch of guests coming up, and then I lecture, like I said. I'm doing one on the rites of passage, I'm doing one on COVID-19, I'm doing one on just a whole bunch of lectures coming up, deocculting the preamble of the Constitution. So a whole bunch of interesting things coming up.
dropping truth bombs left, right, and center for those that can handle
That's
them,
right.
right?
I'm trying.
Not everybody can handle it,
But well, it's good too. It's like the site, I keep it cheap. So if you want to just support what I do, if you see the value in it, then you can just support for really cheap. And then you also get for, if it's a membership, but if you want to quit at the end of the month, you get literally my life's work for about $5. So it's like, it's just such a great way. It's, if you want to dive into this stuff, but yeah, it takes patience and it takes, concentration. You have to sit and actually want to learn a lot of the stuff. And I do have a whole section that's like short videos. It's like, 5, 10, 15-minute videos called Start Here on the site that you can watch for absolutely free. And that can get you a taste of all the stuff. So we go into a lot of the mysteries, like the 153 and the Jesus fish, how, Genesis is written poetically, and, everything from the mask mandates that are going on right now to what gematria is. And so there's lots of stuff. I mean, you could literally dig into that for hours.
yeah, oh yeah, days, weeks. Yeah, I plan to, one day when I have the chance to take a sabbatical, I'll definitely be plowing into that for sure, Marty. So, yeah, I'll have the links in the show notes to all your stuff. By the way, folks, Marty also, like he mentioned it briefly, but he does music. His music is actually pretty good. I'm not personally a fan, kind of rock stuff, but like what I've heard from your stuff, I've loved it. I'm more of a kind of electronic guy, techno guy, but I definitely think you're a good musician and a damn good singer. So folks should check that out as well. And we'll have some links there, of course. So, Marty, thank you so much for spending some time talking about these very fascinating stuff altogether. It is, like you said, it's not the kind of thing you can just dip into. You need to, which is why I encourage folks to kind of watch a few videos, read a little bit more into it if their interest is piqued. But thank you so much for tantalizing us a little bit with this stuff, Marty. And all the best with your future endeavors with the project.
All right. Well, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you for listening to Connecting Minds. We hope you enjoyed this conversation and found it interesting, illuminating, or inspiring. For episode show notes, links, and further information on our guests, please visit christianyordanov.com. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with someone who might also enjoy it. Thank you for being here.